From Wish TV and the All Indiana Podcast Network, this is the News 8 Daily 8 Podcast with Wish TV's Kylie Conway. A Wish TV News 8 update.
Hi, this is Kylie Conway, and this is your News 8 Daily 8 for Tuesday, October 4th. Another beautiful day in store for this Tuesday. Lots of sunshine and light winds. Highs are set to top out in the upper 60s to low 70s. And the search is on for two suspects and a vehicle connected to a gas station shooting. Officers responded to West Morris and Belmont just after midnight. Investigators think two men dressed in all black shot a woman while she was getting gas and then stole her car. Police say the woman is stable at the hospital. And police say a person of interest is in custody after a shooting that happened last night. It happened at a home on North Olney Street near 25th and Sherman around 9 o'clock. Officers found a man shot and critically wounded. Police believe the person in custody and the victim knew each other. Police have not called the person in custody a suspect. Anyone with information is asked to contact IMPD or Crime Stoppers. The latest filings over Indiana's abortion law center on whether the courts should speed up or slow down. The ACLU argues there is no rush to suspend a judge's decision that currently allows abortions to continue in Indiana. Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita wants the Indiana Supreme Court to take up the case immediately. He filed an appeal, also asking the Court of Appeals to put the abortion ban back in place while the process continues. In a filing yesterday, the ACLU said Rokita hastily filed his appeal. It also argues there's no emergency justifying skipping over the Court of Appeals. A federal judge in Indianapolis is throwing out parts of a lawsuit against Noblesville schools over an anti-abortion student group. The suit, filed on behalf of the Noblesville Students for Life, claims school leaders originally approved the organization, then revoked permission less than 1 month later. The group argues the club was rejected in part because of claims that it was not student-driven and the use of a defund Planned Parenthood picture in a flyer, while other groups were allowed to use political imagery. The ruling does not end the entire suit. The judge is allowing some parts to continue, including the claims that the school decision violated the First and 14th Amendments. Noblesville Schools sent us a statement expressing that leaders are aware that most of the claims have been dismissed and looks forward to other final rulings. Authorities now say Hurricane Ian is responsible for at least 101 deaths. More than half come from Lee County, Florida alone, the part where there's Fort Myers, Cape Coral area in South Florida. Nearly a week after the storm smashed into Florida, more than 400,000 people are still without power. Many major roadways are still flooded, and state officials say thousands of people have been rescued, but many more still need help. Florida's Emergency Management Agency says it's working to compile a list of people still missing. And Task Force 1 is working in Southwest Florida. The Indiana group says it will continue to work until its services are no longer needed. The crew calls the loss from Hurricane Ian massive, but says the spirit to recover is already sprouting new wings. And economists predict the storm's destruction caused more than $50 billion in damages and will be a big hit to the overall economic output. According to Moody's Analytics, initial estimates range from $45 to $55 billion in damages in Florida and at least several $billion in South Carolina. Oxford Economics says the hurricane's impact could also slash third quarter economic growth in those states by 2 to 3 percentage points. EY Parthenon says it could also bring down gross domestic product over the next 2 terms. President Biden is promising to rebuild it all after touring Hurricane Fiona destruction in Puerto Rico. He announced a plan for more than $60 million in funding for the territory yesterday. During his visit, Biden acknowledged a string of disasters that have hit the island over the past several years and vowed his commitment to the people there. The president and first lady are scheduled to tour the devastation in Florida tomorrow. A date is set for the next public hearing on the January 6th Capitol insurrection. Several sources tell CNN the House Select Committee will hold its next hearing October 13th. That is next Wednesday. The panel was initially scheduled to hold a hearing on September 28th, but it was postponed due to Hurricane Ian. A new warning cautions of foreign attempts to disrupt the November election. The FBI says several countries are promoting misinformation about the integrity of American elections. Officials say they have not identified any credible threats to election infrastructure. But the warning comes as a number of rising candidates and voters openly express a lack of confidence in the nation's democratic processes. The FBI named Russia, China, and Iran in an assessment released yesterday. The U.S. government has been on high alert since Russia used social media to meddle in the 2016 election. Intelligence officials say Russia is amplifying divisive topics already circulating on the internet instead of creating its own content. The FBI says China is now engaging in a Russian-style influence activity, but focusing more on shaping policy perspectives at the state and local level rather than electoral outcomes. Iranian operatives, according to the FBI, made a website in 2020 that impersonated the Proud Boys group, hoping to start violence against U.S. officials. This all comes as volunteers make a push to get voters registered in Indiana. The FBI says its concern is that the work of foreign operatives is made easy by Americans who openly express their doubts in the election process. The feds say if you see something on the internet about a candidate, do your research and check the accuracy of the information. The Secretary of State's office says it received nearly 87,000 new voter registrations since the beginning of the year. The last day to register is coming up October 11th. And we are now hearing from the estranged wife of Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes. Tasha Adams spoke to CNN yesterday following the first day of the January 6th sedition trial against 5 members of the far-right group. Prosecutors say Rhodes and 4 other associates led an armed rebellion to overthrow the transfer of presidential power. According to Adams, Rhodes studied manipulation techniques at Yale University to inspire others to storm the Capitol.
Every moment he wasn't personally terrorizing us as a family, he was preparing to terrorize the rest of the nation.
Defense attorneys say prosecutors cherry-picked comments from messages and videos and that the government has no real evidence of a plan to attack the Capitol. A scathing new report finds emotional abuse and sexual misconduct are systemic in the highest levels of women's soccer, spanning a number of teams, coaches, and victims. The U.S. Soccer Federation asked former acting Attorney General Sally Yates to investigate claims about the National Women's Soccer League, first published in The Athletic. Half of the coaches in the National Women's Soccer League were fired or left their jobs last year amid allegations. One nearby example, the former coach of Racing Louisville. Player Aaron Simon accuses Christy Hawley of touching her inappropriately during a film session. The team later terminated Hawley, but refused to give a reason publicly. The investigative report identifies failures throughout America's soccer structure, including the Soccer Federation. The report calls for more transparency and better vetting of coaches. Overnight, North Korea fired what appears to be its farthest ever ballistic missile flight. It went over Japan, leading to evacuation notices and suspended trains in the country. Japanese officials say it flew over the country's main island and landed in the Pacific Ocean some 1,800 miles east. Experts say it was capable of carrying a nuclear weapon and is the most aggressive missile test in at least 5 years from the north. It comes less than a week after Vice President Kamala Harris visited South Korea and the border it shares with North Korea. And to business headlines, average gasoline prices are on the rise nationally. According to GasBuddy, the national average increased 11 cents per gallon in the past week to $3.78. AAA says the current average price in central Indiana is $4.16 a gallon. A week ago, it was $3.97. U.S. home prices are dropping at the fastest pace since 2009. Black Knight says median home prices are down 2% since their June peak. The once red-hot housing sector is in the midst of a severe correction as the Federal Reserve raises interest rates. Incidents of fraud and scams are occurring more often on the popular peer-to-peer payment service Zelle. A Senate report found the large banks that partly own Zelle have been reluctant to compensate customers who've been victims of fraud or scams. About 1,700 banks and credit unions use Zelle. A poor pumpkin harvest appears to not be in the cards this fall because of what farmers believe is an acceptable range of weather extremes during the crucial growing period. Pumpkins are typically planted in late spring and early summer and harvested during the fall in growing regions across the country that stretch from the Northeast to the West Coast. Illinois is the largest pumpkin producer, generating more than 40% of the country's crop as part of the over billion-dollar commodity. Purdue says Indiana consistently ranks in the top 5 pumpkin-growing states. The Food and Drug Administration announced new rules for nutrition labels that can go on the front of food packages to indicate that they are healthy. Under the proposal, manufacturers can label their products healthy if they contain a meaningful amount of food from at least one of the food groups or subgroups, such as fruit, vegetable, or dairy, recommended by the dietary guidelines. Chase Bank will unveil its first electric vehicle charging stations at its Carmel branch. It's part of a pilot program which will include charging stations at 50 branches across the United States. The chargers will be open to everyone, not just Chase members. The event begins this morning at 9 with a ribbon-cutting ceremony at 9:30. And finally, the 2024 NBA All-Star Committee is bringing a new art campaign to Indianapolis. It's all to celebrate 500 days until the city hosts the 2024 All-Star Game. The committee calls the campaign Hoosier Historia. It's the first in a series of public art and culture projects celebrating the event. Artists statewide will create 24 basketball sculptures that pay tribute to the state's high school basketball stories, traditions, and legacies. The committee says the sculptures will be on display downtown during All-Star Weekend. The All-Star Game in Indianapolis takes place February of 2024. This has been your News 8 Daily 8 for Wish TV. I'm Kylie Conway. Online at wishtv.com and follow us on Facebook when you search Wish TV.
This is the News 8 Daily 8 podcast with Wish TV's Kylie Conway. A Wish TV News 8 update on demand for even more on demand and on the go. Connect with Wish TV on Facebook at wishtv.com and on the free Wish TV mobile app. Thank you for listening. And be sure to like, subscribe, and follow this podcast for updates every weekday morning on the All Indiana Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcast.